Welcome to Soul of Travel, Women's Wisdom and Mindful Travel. I'm your host, Christine Winebrenner Irick. Each week, you'll hear me having soulful conversations with women who are tourism professionals, trailblazers, and community leaders around the world. They share their personal and professional journeys to inspire you, and their stories teach you how to become a more conscious traveler, live life aligned with your values, and create a positive impact. We are thought leaders, action takers, and heart-centered change makers, and this is the soul of travel. Hey listeners, let's just pause there for a second. I am so happy to say these words. I have missed you. I have missed us being together here in this space. I am so glad that it is finally time to gather and begin a new season. And more than a number, this truly feels like a new season for me and for the podcast. As we begin, I want to take a moment to catch up, let you in on what's been happening in my life, and share what we'll be up to here at the podcast this season. As you know, there has been a pause here on Soul of Travel podcast, and back in October, we decided to take a break. It had been a real rough season of time for me from last March really into October. I think I've mentioned it here and there on the podcast, but I really started experiencing a lot of migraines, chronic migraines, like 14 to 20 to even 30 symptom days a month. And it was really starting to take a toll to try to manage podcast, life, dance mom, etc. Really just to show up and live each day with the exponential impacts of having headache day after headache day and just the fatigue and tiredness and slowness. And it was really just starting to weigh pretty heavily on me. So we decided to pause in October. We also were looking for additional sponsors to help us out here with the podcast. As I've mentioned in the past, this has been a labor of love and a passion project. And it's been something that I have pretty much fully financed. We've had a few people step in here and there to give us a bump along the way, as well as independent listeners who have made monthly and one-time contributions, which I deeply, deeply appreciate because everything helps us move that needle to being able to support the podcast and its production financially. But I really had some life situations that also made it so it really isn't feasible for me to just carry that financial burden by myself. So we needed to pause, reset. I really needed to take some time to heal. We needed to gather everything together, get our ducks in a row, if you will, and find the support that we needed and kind of restart the podcast. So I thought maybe it would take 2 or 3 months, and here we are in May. I also don't know how that happened, but for many of you who have had these seasons in your life, I'm sure you can understand where like the days drag on, but time flies by. And that's really been the space that I have been in. So I wanted to just let you know that that's where we've been and why there was the pause in the podcast. I really, really just needed some time to be still and be slow and be mindful in my own life and really try to take care of myself, which can be a very hard practice for me. So I appreciate the grace that you've given, and I have seen that many of you have still been listening to past episodes and following me along on LinkedIn and social media, and I really appreciate that continued support. So here we are, season 7, Soul of Travel podcast. Last week just celebrated our 6th-year anniversary from kicking off the podcast. So that's a huge milestone. Many podcasts don't make it past one season. So this is very, very exciting to have this accomplishment. And also, some other really big news is that last week we hit another huge milestone, which is 50,000 lifetime downloads here at the podcast. So, 50,000. Just to take a moment and recognize what a huge accomplishment that is. And I love that these downloads are from countries all around the world, listeners joining us from every continent except Antarctica, although I've had listeners say that they would listen there so that we can hit that milestone as well. Not that that in and of itself is significant, but for me, it just represents that ripple and that wave, which we're going to talk about in this episode. So I just hope you will give yourselves a moment to celebrate that, because we're here because of you and this community and this beautiful, beautiful collection of guests that have come along together to create the stories and this space for Soul of Travel podcast. As I mentioned, we were really looking for someone to come in and see our vision and want to support the podcast. And looking for different ways that we can do partnerships and collaborations and find sponsors or advertisers or people who just believe in the podcast and want to financially contribute because they believe it's a space that needs to exist. And I am very, very excited to share about a new title sponsor that we are working with specifically for this special Trailblazer series. And I know this will move forward, but we wanted to start here. I'm so deeply happy to weave Teresa McDermott and Strictly Jane Austen Tours into the Soul of Travel tapestry. To tell you a little about them, Strictly Jane Austen Tours is Bath's most ostentatious travel company, delivering premium bookable Jane Austen experiences and bespoke programs, from expert guided walking tours and Regency dancing to immersive experiences, bringing to life the elegance and wit of her literary world for groups and individuals alike. And they are collaborating with Soul of Travel because it aligns so naturally with Strictly Jane Austen Tours' mission to create meaningful, story-rich travel experiences that are rooted in culture, connection, and women's voices. And supporting the podcast allows them to champion thoughtful, independent travel storytelling while reaching a community of travelers who value depth, authenticity, and literary discovery. And this partnership is really important to me because of this connection that we had. Teresa reached out after listening to a few episodes of the podcast, including the final episode of last season, which I mentioned. In that episode, we were seeking out aligned partners to financially support the podcast, to keep it professionally produced, and keep bringing you this important content. And she shared that the stories really resonated with her and that she felt so tied to this space, in a way that it connected with what she was creating at Strictly Jane Austen Tours. And I have really enjoyed exploring the ways that we can co-create and storytell together with this aligned mission of meaningful storytelling that amplifies the voices of women. So I am so excited for all that we kind of have in the works. So stay tuned for more of this as this Trailblazer series comes to life. Again, thank you so much, Teresa, for standing up for what is important to you and for believing in this work that we're doing here at Soul of Travel Podcast. And I can't wait to continue this partnership for this series and see where this takes us. In conjunction with this Trailblazer series, I also want to create a space for you to celebrate and cheer on the work of the trailblazers in your life. And I'm doing this in partnership with Becky Rupp, the founder of Trailblazer Wellness. This is really extra special to me because she is in my circle of biggest supporters and really is one of the people that always keeps me moving forward because of the belief she has in me and the belief she has in my vision. And these people who believe in us as much or sometimes even more than we believe in ourselves are so important in our work and in our lives. Sometimes they are quiet cheerleaders, and sometimes they're standing on the sidelines with a megaphone cheering you on. And we cannot have these trailblazers without the cheerleaders. And I think what we often learn is that the ones that you inspire are inspiring you too, that there's this reciprocal relationship. And I really know that's true for Becky and I because as much as she believes in and has supported my work at Soul of Travel and Lotus Sojourns, I'm right there with my signs and cheers to make sure she knows that her work at Trailblazer Wellness is incredibly important and innovative and impactful. So Becky and I are teaming up to create the Soulful Trailblazer campaign, which will offer you the chance to share about a woman who inspires you and who is working to amplify the voices of women, champion local communities, and working to create a positive change in the world. So, in order to participate, you can visit the Soul of Travel website and submit your recognition and the celebration of the soulful trailblazer in your life. You can share your thoughts, either audio, video clips, or written, and share those thoughts and insights over the next few months. And we'll select one or two soulful trailblazers at the end of this campaign to interview here on the podcast. So, thank you again, Becky, for your continued support and your contributions that have allowed for this to be possible. You can find a list of all of our podcast allies and community partners, sponsors, and advertisers on the homepage of our website. If you'd like to be a part of this wave of support and of these important conversations and spaces and allowing us to continue to move forward, you can go ahead and email me at souloftravelpodcast@gmail.com. And with that, I'd really love to talk to you more about this series that we are launching next week. As I began to wind my way back to the series, I knew that I wanted it to be even more intentional and, bring that intentionality into what we are doing here on the podcast. It has always been a place to highlight people doing positive work in tourism and around the globe, and this container for celebrating women and the impact they are making in so many different ways as we examine this kind of intersection of tourism and social justice. And it has been a place not only where our professional lives are shared, but also the deep wisdom gained on our personal journeys. And I think it's that element that really, really sets Soul of Travel apart is that we understand that who we are deeply influences the work that we do. And when I sat down with this list of women, there's still probably hundreds of women on my list that I would love to speak to here at the podcast. Um, I I noticed this trend of these women who really stood out as trailblazers to me. And not just because of the innovative work, the impactful initiatives, and the inclusive communities that they're building, But because each of them are not just looking at how they can have a positive impact, they're really looking at something bigger. They're looking at starting a movement in creating this wave that ripples out past anything they can do on their own. And by shaking things up, by asking hard questions, by confronting inequity, by really digging into and implementing solutions, they are breaking down barriers and working to dismantle deeply rooted systems of oppression. They are forging paths that will lead generations forward with the shifts they are making today. So again, it's so much bigger than this moment. It's a movement. These women I have followed for years and I have cheered for them virtually. These are women who I see creating this surge that truly embodies the wave of opportunity and impact that I hope solo travel is and can continue to be. I have begun having conversations with this group of leaders, and I have really been lit up with chills and moved to tears. And most importantly, I have been given a renewed sense of purpose and hope, which has been really missing from my life over these past few months that I have been away from the podcast. And in this time in our life and our world, and I have been saying this since the podcast began in 2020, and it seems to keep being some version of this moment. But at this time, when the world feels so heavy, I think this hope and purpose is so vitally important. So I hope that you will enjoy these beautiful connections and inspiring conversations as much as I'm having joy experiencing them. So be sure to block off time in your calendar, not as an obligation, but really as a gift to yourself. I'd love for you to think about these moments um, as sacred time that you can be in this circle of women and see the work they're doing and see how you can support them and what this is creating in our world. So join me and Sophie Llanos, who is the board secretary of the Porter Voice Collective, when we kick off this Trailblazer Series next Wednesday, May 27th. You'll hear her journey, her passion for bringing equity to extractive industries, including tourism, and be with us as we realize that we are in this moment together where we really tapped into the essence that it is the soul of travel. And this moment sparked new life and love into the podcast. And speaking of sparking life and love, and speaking of these beautiful moments, I just want to go back to a moment several months ago um, when I shared this vulnerable moment on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Um, and I did it because I really wanted to show the contrast between these moments in our lives. And I had shared, one day this like kind of happy, joyful picture and this thing that was happening in my life. And then the next day was such a contrast where I was really feeling, um, just kind of personally destroyed by some things that I was experiencing and navigating. And I was so struck down in that moment. And I wanted to show that contrast between moments and highlight that it is really easy to sanitize experiences on social media. Um, Especially when we don't authentically share that dark and light together. And that moment, besides being a part of my own journey and what I was experiencing at the time, which I'm not necessarily going to go into specifics, but just this wave of support that showed up, which, again, I wasn't really asking for. I thought that I was doing a service by showing up authentically and just kind of trying to express how real life can feel sometimes, and let that be a part of what you were seeing in this virtual reality, in this social world. And the ripple just kind of continued to carry on as it moved around the globe. And I just was caught off guard. I was incredibly moved. And again, I just thought about all the people that were reaching out to me, who were a part of my life, who were a part of this moment because they have been a part of this podcast. And I know that they haven't just made connections with me and aren't just showing up for me, but I have seen how they've connected, how you've connected with one another and shown up and supported each other. And for me, this is everything. This is what I am trying to do. This, again, I've said tapestry, and this idea of weaving together stories and journeys and soulful connections. Like, this is what this podcast is. And the way that you showed that to me in practice in this moment, I will never take for granted. It was such a beautiful example and a beautiful reminder of how important this work is. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you who took your time in that moment for me to reach out and make sure that everything was okay, and just share your love and gratitude. And I appreciate it more than you know. Um, and to me, this is an example of why this podcast is really more than just a group of conversations. It is more than the wisdom of the incredibly talented women working to make this world a better place. It is the heart and soul of a community that shows up for each other. It's the center of this tapestry weaving its way across the world by itself. I have seen, as I said, you working with one another, showing up for one another throughout this tapestry. And in this moment where you showed up for me, I truly nearly collapsed from the overwhelming wave of gratitude and joy and love. Like many of you, I'm sure, because it feels like a very human experience, I have always felt a bit on the outside, and I have spent much of the times in my life trying to be invisible, working to be invisible, taking up as little space as possible, and, trying not to be an imposition, trying not to create waves, just trying to be such a small blip. And, here I find myself asking you, each of you, every guest, every listener, to take up space and to shine bright and to make sure you are seen and heard, because I know that this is what will create that tsunami that will collapse this system of oppression and will create the change that we need. And it is not lost on me that I am working so hard to build a community and create a world that I have longed to be a part of my whole entire life. So when we talk about how these intersections of personal stories and personal wisdom and professional creation intersect, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I think the soul of travel is so powerful, because you are all creating something. You are all creating light in the world where you have felt the darkest. And it is my great honor to be able to amplify each of your stories. So when someone asks you or me what the soul of travel is, I hope you will share this. It is a podcast about wise women in travel, yes, but it is about curiosity and strength and inclusivity. It is about the dreams we dare to dream. It is about the beating heart of humanity that we strive to share as we bring people through the world and we use this beautiful tool that we call travel. And above all, it is about hope and love and that glimmer in each of us that catalyzes the work we do that eventually becomes the soul of travel. I am so excited, even though I'm crying while I'm trying to share this with you. I am so excited to bring you this season, and I hope that together we can continue to be a space for connection and growth and belonging, and do it in a way that allows for us to show up as our most human selves, navigating a complex and beautiful world together. So I will be with you again soon as we kick off season 7 and our Trailblazer series. Until then, I hope you enjoy your journey. Thank you for listening to Soul of Travel. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you loved this conversation, I encourage you to subscribe and rate the podcast. Please share episodes that inspire you with others because this is how we extend the impact of this show. Learn more about each of my guests by reading our episode blogs, which are more than your average show notes. I think you'll love the connection. Find our episode blogs at www.souloftravelpodcast.com. I am so proud of the way these conversations are bringing together people from around the world. If this sounds like your community, welcome. I am so happy you are here. I am all about community and would love to connect. You can find me on Facebook at Soul of Travel Podcast or follow me on Instagram either at she.sojourns or at Soul of Travel Podcast. Stay up to date by joining the Soul of Travel Podcast mailing list. I'd also like to share a quick thank you to my podcast producer and content magician, Carly Eduardo, CEO of Convergente. I look forward to getting to know you and hopefully hear your story.